Hello, energy. So let's take a big picture overview of what this course is about and what topics we're going to cover and why we need to look at them. So energy in the news, we see what the headlines about the wildly fluctuating oil prices, oil doubling, going up to $150, particularly in 2008 before the economy collapsed. In fact, we'll look at some of the coupling between the fact that the economy collapsed because the energy cost oil cost in particular, was putting such a burden on our economy. We'll look at the Middle East geopolitical chaos and how that impacts us. How much oil do we get out of the Middle East? How does that impact it and impact us? And how does that impact the cost of our oil? We hear that OPEC, as strong as they have been in the past, that they are now irrelevant. We'll see about how relevant that statement is. We'll look at the U.S. energy independence. We hear a lot about we need to be independent of energy, independent in energy from other countries, independence. However, in 2014, we're importing about 40% of the oil. We headed in the right direction, because we were importing as much as 65% of our oil from other countries. And we'll look at emissions. And for instance, electric cars, do they really have zero emissions? Most of the electric cars have an emblem on them that says zero emissions. We'll look at the environmental impacts on things and look at some of those statements. The impact of the dollars flowing out of the U.S. because of imported oil. We'll look at the importance of that and look at the facts regarding that. National security, as I mentioned, the national security issue, of course, is important, because if we're importing a lot of oil from a particular set of countries and they decide to embargo us, as OPEC did back in the 70s, it places us in a very difficult position. What about oil and gas resource depletion? We hear that we're running out of oil, we're running out of gas, but then we develop fracking, and that seems to say, hey, we got an infinite supply of oil and gas, and we'll have it as long as we want it ad infinitum. We'll look at the laws of geology and what they say to that question. We'll look at the new energy technologies. I mentioned fracking and how that's impacted us. We'll look at the developing solar technologies and the cost of that has dropped recently, making that much more favorable than it was. We'll look at the impact of using our energy more efficiently and what the economics of that is. And essentially all of the environmental issues stem from energy consumption, whether it's air pollution, ground pollution, climate change, or water issues. They all are energy related. If we could solve our energy question and energy problems, we would clean up the environment and not have to talk about environmental issues anymore. So in a nutshell, let's look at course topics. The topics that we'll cover is energy and society and the coupling between our society and how we live and the energy we use, energy in the economy, how our energy sector impacts our economy, how much it hurts us, how much it helps us. We'll look at the sources of energy. Where are we getting energy from? Are we getting most of it from coal? Are we getting most of it from imported oil? Are we getting a lot of it from solar or wind or nuclear? And what's the trend on where we're getting our energy sources? We'll look at how much, as I already mentioned, how much energy we're importing. And energy is not all created equal, we'll find out, by the way. Oil is not equal to natural gas. There are many differences there. We can't replace oil consumption tomorrow with natural gas, for instance. We'll look at the pricing of energy, how the price is determined, who determines it, what the mechanisms for determining it, and we'll look at the new renewable energy resources. What are those resources and how effectively can we capture them and convert them into the forms that we want to use them. We'll look at the physical laws of energy. There's limitations in thermodynamics regarding the laws of how to convert energy from one form to another form. For instance, a barrel of oil sitting in a home won't light the lights. It won't heated, it won't air conditioning. We've got to have a conversion system to convert the energy in the form we get it out of the earth or the wind or the solar into the form that we want it to drive our computers, to light our lights, to keep our house warm or cool in the winter or cool in the summer. We'll look at the electric power technologies. A lot of our energy that we use is in the form of electricity. It's one of the most versatile forms of energy that we have. And we'll look at those technologies and the trends that is taking place there and how that's changing the landscape. Transportation technology. We're getting more and more efficient automobiles. By 2025, the rules are in place to mandate that the average car that is produced by any manufacturer has to get 55 miles per gallon. That sounds like a very high goal, but it is, we'll look at how attainable that is. We'll look at the energy efficiency and what that can do for us. Just using the energy and doing the things that we do with energy in a more efficient manner. So those are the topics that we'll be covering. So some of the conclusions that we'll reach in this course that you might find interesting and to follow is that we'll see how energy is tightly coupled to our economy. And I'll just leave it there, that there's a very tight coupling between improving the economy and increasing the amount of energy that we consume. National security, we're pretty much familiar with that, and how dependence on other countries for our oil in particular puts us in a difficult position many times. We'll learn some unusual things, surprising things that you may not recognize at this point, but one is the fact that wind energy, solar energy, and nuclear energy do not save any oil. You may find that surprising, but in fact it's just the fact that putting in more wind energy, more solar energy, more nuclear energy to generate electricity does not save any oil, which is our critical energy source. Electric cars, we'll find, do not significantly reduce CO2 emissions, in spite of the fact that many of them have a zero emissions badge on the back. Not today. Theoretically it's possible, but that's a hypothetical, and if we want to do that, then we need to plan to get to the point where electric cars do have much lower emissions than our gasoline-powered cars, which are on target to reach 55 miles per gallon in 2025. And the last thing that you hear about most things, and that is that there's no silver bullet solution to our energy issues. So look forward to being with you and covering this material, and hope you enjoy it. Thank you.